Now we're going to get to the very important questions and the very important answers that Jim Jordan received in the hearing in regards to the origin of COVID. And it's amazing when you listen to it of what $9 million will buy you. But what a lot of the news has left out and completely ignored, because we all know what transpired through 2020, but back in 2019, October 18th through October 27th in Wuhan, China, at the Wuhan Sports Center, which I did a video of the location, and it's the Wuhan Sports Center is 23 minutes from the Wuhan lab. And then the place they were housing the athletes was also 23 to 25 minutes from the Wuhan lab, and really close to the fish marketplace and food marketplace. But the important thing to note here is that there was 140 different nations, different countries, different nations, 140. There was a total of 9,308 athletes participating in this from all around the world. And they all went home after the Wuhan World Military Games that were held in Wuhan, China. They all went home to their relatives. So, and the reason why it's important to know not only the origin, but the time of the release and the facts, all the facts behind what transpired as to this virus going throughout the world. If we would have been a little quicker, maybe to quarantine the athletes, that wouldn't have spread throughout all the world the way it did. And as we move into the future, if we look back, we see, you can search this on Google yourself, Wuhan Military Games 2019, athletes complain about flu-like symptoms. And you can just look that up for yourself, and we need to investigate this, because they knew that the World Military Games were going to be held in Wuhan, China, many, many months before October 19th, 2019. On another channel I had back in January of 2020, I did this video, and it cost me my YouTube account because I was showing how close the Wuhan Institute of Virology was to where they were housing the athletes right there, and how close the games were where the athletes actually competed. It was within 23 to 25 minutes drive time, and highways were not needed. And that video was deleted with other videos that I put out stressing the importance of what transpired in Wuhan, China, because a lot of athletes were reporting of flu-like symptoms. And that channel had over 27,000 subscribers, and it was completely deleted. But now it's okay to talk about that. And now Jim Jordan is getting some very important questions answered. And again, it's just we need more sunshine in our government here in the United States of America, and in the world for that matter. So here's Jim Jordan getting straight to the point and getting answers.
Look forward, the Democrats tell us. Focus on the future. Might have started in a lab, might have happened in nature. But here's the question I keep coming up with. If it may have been a lab, may have been nature, we're supposed to look forward, then why did Dr. Fauci work so hard for just one of those theories? Why was it so important to push one over the other? Dr. Barra said, we should entertain all hypotheses. Dr. Fauci had his hypothesis, how this started. We should entertain all of them. But that's not what happened. That is definitely not what happened. 3 years ago, if you thought it came from a lab, if you raised that, you were called a nut job. You got censored on Twitter. You were blacklisted on Twitter. You were even called a crackpot by the very scientist who in late January sent emails to Dr. Fauci and said it came from a lab. They called you crackpot. Is that right, Dr. Redfield?
I think the most upsetting thing to me was the Baltimore Sun calling me a racist because I said this came from a Wuhan lab.
Dr. Redfield, you ran the CDC and you were on the coronavirus task force. Is that right?
Correct.
That was formed on January 29th, 2020. Is that right?
Correct.
2 days later, Dr. Fauci gets an email from Dr. Anderson which says what? Virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding. From
Next
whatever.
day, I know, did he share that email with you, by the way, Dr. Redfield?
No.
As a member of the task force, as a head of CDC, did he share that email with you?
No.
Okay, next day, February 1st, Dr. Gary sends Dr. Fauci another email. That email says, I don't know how this happens in nature, but it would be easy to do in a lab. Did he share that email with you, Dr. Redfield? You didn't see either one of those emails, even though you're head of CDC, even though you're on the coronavirus task force that had been formed just 3 days earlier.
No.
3 days later, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, who told us it came from a lab in emails to Dr. Fauci that Dr. Fauci wouldn't let Dr. Redfield see, 3 days later, they changed their position 180 degrees. The question is why? Mr. Wade, why would they change their position that fast when the only intervening event is a conference call with Dr. Fauci, the guy who wouldn't let Dr. Redfield see the very emails that they had sent him, Dr. Redfield, head of CDC on the coronavirus task force? Why would they change their position, Dr. Wade, or Mr. Wade?
Well, this question does lie at the heart of the issue. What is pertinent, it seems to me, is there's no new scientific evidence that we can see that came available between these dates, the January 31st and Feb 4.
Right, there's no new, I think you're, go ahead.
So you have to ask if there were other kinds of influence available. Now, it is true that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Farry in London were very powerful research officials, and between them they controlled...
I read your testimony, I saw that. Yeah.
So...
Why don't you cut to the chase and tell them what you really think was the reason?
I don't know what the reason was.
I know what it was.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you say it because I read your testimony. I think you said it in your testimony too. Maybe you're reluctant to say it here, but go ahead.
Well, if you're looking at the timeline, on May 21st, just a few weeks after the Nature Medicine article had come out, two of the signatories of the original email to Dr. Fauci, that's Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, were awarded a $9 million grant for the...
So there's 9 million reasons why they changed their mind. I knew you'd get to it. I read that last night. 3 months after, so 3 days after they say it came from a lab, they changed their position, and the only intervening event's a conference call with Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins. Again, a call that Mr. Redfield was not allowed to be on, the head of CDC and on the coronavirus task force. And then 3 months later, shazam, they get $9 million from Dr. Fauci. Well, isn't that something? Isn't that something? That's why we want to talk to these guys. That's why Chairman Winstrup wants to bring in Dr. Anderson and Dr. Gary and ask them a series of questions so we can get to the bottom of this, so we can move forward and deal with this. Now, here's the key question. Look, I'm just a common sense guy from Ohio. I majored in wrestling in college, but I got a degree in economics. You're supposed to get a degree when you go to college. I got one in economics. And one of the things they tell you about is a thing called opportunity cost. So when you're spending your time making sure that the country believes only one of these theories, you could have been doing what Dr. Redfield was doing in our government, trying to figure out how we deal with this virus. And what was Dr. Fauci doing? He was trying to cover his backside, and everybody knows it. And that's the part that ticks us off, because this is the highest paid guy in our government getting all kinds of money to tell us things that were not accurate. Because we now know U.S. tax dollars went to a lab in China, a lab that was not up to code, a lab that was doing gain-of-function research, and that's where this thing most definitely came from. And Dr. Fauci had to prove, no, he can't have that news getting out. And that's why he did what he did, to the exclusion of a brilliant guy running our CDC, kept him out of the loop. Keeping him out of the loop probably potentially could have harmed America. That's the thing that ticks us all off. And that's why, Mr. Chairman, this hearing is so darn important, and we get to the bottom of really what happened. I yield back.